I read a great line the other day. Everything is scripture. And it was from Milarepa. Milarepa was a Tibetan murderer who became a saint. He became enlightened in one lifetime. And the big thing he got when he had his first major epiphany was that everything is scripture and that everyone is the prophet. It's a really, really big revelation. It's something that's been very true for me. I like Milarepa because Milarepa was a murderer, murdered 35 people, revenging his family, and was bereft afterwards because his enemies, just every time he killed enemies, they kept multiplying, and he wanted to find enlightenment and freedom within one lifetime, and he did it. I like him because he came from a place of crime to a place of transcendence in one lifetime. I like St. Paul. St. Paul, or he used to be Saul of Tarsus. St. Paul wrote, I think, 17 of the books in the New Testament, like letters to the Romans, letters to the Corinthians. I love St. Paul because Paul was a murderer. Paul crucified and tortured Christians before he had his epiphany on the road to Damascus. I like Mandela. I like Mandela because Mandela, when he was fighting for freedom, became a terrorist. He became violent. He dropped bombs on people. It took him 30 years in prison before he could find a higher power, which was love, working from love. In prison he had an epiphany, and in the epiphany he was shown that there was a divine plan, that there was an elevated power, and the elevated power was love, or logos. I like these people because they're muscular. They're muscular because they make their beliefs and their energy and their love work in the real world, or in this, if you can call it the real world, but they make it work with finances, they make it work with politics, they make it work with money, they make it work with health, they make it work with relationships. But they recognise that that the violent power, the angry power, was always a much lower power. It was kind of a grain of sand compared to what they could access. But I liked them because they'd come from that place. You go and talk to some kids in prison and they say to you, well, what chance have I got? I've murdered somebody, I've taken a life. I say, well, St. Paul took lives. And St. Paul became one of the most powerful apostles, one of the most powerful preachers in the history of humanity. I say, look at Milarepa. Milarepa killed 35 people. If he killed 35 people, Milarepa killed 35 people. And that, when he started to renounce violence and go back to find a higher place, he was what you would call the prodigal son. He was revered because he had been violent. He was revered because he had tried that path and it didn't work. And that's what makes me a good teacher. What makes me a good teacher is not that I've read books or that I've become learned. What makes me a great teacher is that I have been extremely violent. I've been in hundreds of fights, thousands of violent situations. I have kicked people's teeth out of the head. I've strangled people unconscious. I've turned up at people's factories and fucked them around the car park, ragged them around, knocked them unconscious. I've been an extremely violent person. because I thought that was the way. I thought I had to protect myself against this very dangerous world, and I found a higher way. But I was never interested in, wearing socks and sandals and selling Bibles door to door. I'm interested in muscularity. I'm interested in a spirituality, in a religion that really works in the world. Something that enables me to be a conduit for infinite power. That's what I'm interested in. If you look at people like Milarepa, you look at people like Mandela was revered. You look at people like St. Paul, look at people like Francis of Assisi, where they came from. These were men, these were real muscular people, and they were really prolific in the world. I mean, St. Paul was a prolific writer. Milarepa was a prolific teacher. Mandela is revered in the world because they've come from this place. So they're the same. They're interested in pragmatics. They're interested in a spirituality that works. They're interested in a God that can change things if they become a conduit for it. But I'm not talking about dogma, and I'm not talking about a guy in the sky with kind eyes and a beard. I'm talking about being a conduit for an infinite force. If this force was electricity, me becoming a great electrician, me becoming a master of manipulating, or a master of, not manipulating, that's the wrong word, managing this force, being a servant for this force, being a caretaker for this force. I'm interested in that kind of power. Not being powerful, but being a conduit for power. Not being a leader, but being a servant. Being not interested in autonomy, but interested in freedom under authority, so freedom under a higher force. So I don't have to have autonomy over electricity, I just have to be a great conduit for it, or have a great conduit for it. When all of these people had their epiphanies, when I had my epiphany, you do start to realise that everything is scripture, everything talks to you, everything informs you. Everybody is the prophet, everybody speaks to you, everybody teaches you. Everything is informative, everybody becomes a mirror. Everyone shows you where you can work. The successful people show you where your strengths are because you feel it enlightened inside you. And the people that make you angry and create pilot lights of rage or jealousy or envy, they become your teachers. They show you where you've got shadows. They show you where you're weak. They show you where you have a break in the integrity. And then you can start looking at anything. You can start looking at everything, and you can start seeing potential everywhere. If you look at people like Ouspensky or Geoff or Bennett, who worked in a system called the Way. Bennett was one of Ouspensky's main students in this in this form of mysticism. And he said, there's nothing I can't teach you about becoming a powerful person in the world that you can't learn from digging the garden. He said, I do all these exercises in movement, in prayer, in meditation, in cerebral abstinence, in cerebral strength, in control and sovereignty over the body, and about moving energy, about taking energy and using your attention to create in the world. He said, but I can show you lots of techniques. He said, but if you go and dig the garden and play around with plants, you'll learn everything you need to learn about becoming powerful in the world. All of the lessons are there in nature. Nature, the mud, just digging the mud becomes scripture. Laying a path becomes scripture. Digging a piece of concrete out the floor. If you've got a piece of concrete, say if you've got a garden post, I had this yesterday, garden post blew over, the fence broke, the garden post blew over, and the post had completely snapped. So I had to dig the old post out, which was embedded in the earth in concrete, and I learnt more from digging that piece of concrete out of the ground than you would learn from any book. Because that piece of concrete represented a shadow, it represented a false belief or a fear or an addiction. And I realised that I'm not going to get that big lump of concrete out in one fell swoop with a big hammer. I had to cut away the mud. I had to get all the mud away because the mud and the shit was supporting the concrete. I had to cut all the way around it. I had to cut around it and below it as much as I can. Then I got my hammer and bolster and I just kept chipping the edges off. Kept taking the edges off the concrete until eventually there was no big lumps of concrete to pull out. Working on a piece of concrete, pulling a piece of concrete out of the earth was more instructive to me about metaphysics and about creating in the world and about cleaning and about alignment than reading the Bhagavad Gita. It was right there. It was right in front of me. I can learn more from looking at the person I wake up next to in the morning than I can from going and meeting a Zen master. Because the person who's closest to me is the person that can teach me the most. I can learn more from somebody that triggered, if somebody criticises me and triggers a pilot light of rage and anger, that person is more instructive to me than the Dalai Lama. Because that person is showing me something in me that I need to clean or need to align or need to control in order for me to be the best example of who I can be, to be my authentic self. I worked with a girl once who was a healer, And as I got talking to her, she kept talking about her brother and about her brother had upset her. Her brother had said this and her brother had said that, and her brother doesn't understand her spirituality and her brother makes her angry, but she keeps sending her brother love. And I realised that she was paying the wrong person to mentor her. I said, don't give me money, send a cheque to your brother, because your brother's your teacher. Your brother is the prophet. Your brother is showing you everything you need to learn. You're going to far-flung places of the world to learn. You don't fucking need to. You need to just listen to what your brother's saying. When you can love your brother, when you can hear what your brother's got to say and it not affect you and not hurt you and not make you feel ashamed or angry or full of rage or full of judgment or weak, when you can do that, you won't need to go and see anybody else. The teachers are right around you. The person that upsets you on the internet, the person you feel as though you need to defend yourself against, the person that fills you full of rage or jealousy or envy, the person, especially the people that you are vitriolic against, the people that you want to criticise all the time, they are your teachers. If I upset you and I make you angry, send me a fucking cheque, because I'm your teacher. Especially if I make you feel angry, especially if I make you feel vengeful or envious or greedy or insecure. If I make you feel any of those things, then I'm your poultice, I'm your teacher, I'm good for you. And if you make me feel the same, it's exactly the same thing. You're my teacher. It doesn't mean that if you're vitriolic on the internet and you're saying heinous things, it doesn't make you a good person. It just makes you a fucking toilet brush. It means you're cleaning, or you're showing people where they need to clean. You're showing people, where they need to align, where they need to get rid of the shit. But of course, if we're doing that to other people, if we're angry and vengeful and vitriolic with other people, then we're creating our own karma. We're showing people how we haven't got any sovereignty at all ourselves. The point I'm trying to make is that everybody's a teacher. If my friend writes to me and I can see that in his email it's full of veiled criticism, I've had a couple of emails lately from two people that I love, you both know who you are, and they're emails that are saying nice things but they're veiled with criticism. But it can't touch me because I love both of these people. But if that criticism was to upset me, then those people would become my teacher. As it is, I'm just able to look at the email and think, that's who he really is. That's the shadow. That's who he really is. That line is the shadow. When you start to become a seer, when you start to align and become clean, one of the siddhas is that you're able to look at people like you're looking at an x-ray. And you're able to work with people and you're able to help people. But equally, you're able to look at people and see a mirror. If I look at somebody and I feel judgment, I know that's about me. If I look at somebody and I feel anger, I know that is about me. If I look at somebody and I feel shame or judgment, that is about me. Equally, if I look at somebody like Mark Rylance, look at Mark Rylance, who's this phenomenal actor. If I watch him doing Richard III or Jerusalem, or when he's doing his Golden Globe speech for Jerusalem and he's quoting a poem, you just see beauty and love and God. I see it right through him. I see that's me. I see that potential is me. So the great things I see is the mirror saying that's your greatest potential, and the negativity I see, that's me. That's my teacher. Everything becomes scripture. You think I'm talking to you when I'm doing this talk now. I'm actually talking to the camera, but looking at my own reflection, I'm fucking talking to me, because I'm cleaning. I'm cleaning. I want to improve. I want to be a magnificent conduit. I want to be able to stand in a room and people be healed just because I'm there, just because I'm a reflection for divine energy, for divine potential. Not about me as a guru, but me as a conduit for divinity, me as a conduit for infinite light or for infinite love or for healing potential. That's what excites me. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. So I have no enemies. The only enemy can be inside me. There is a war going on in all of us. And as Rumi said, we've just got to hope that we don't lose, because some of these shadows are battling all the time. Look at the news. Look at the world on the news. Look at what the world is showing you. They're just reflections of what's going on inside of us all the time. There are universes inside of us, and there are elements that are battling for sovereignty. We just have to make sure that we connect to our highest game, and that we become sovereigns of our mind, of our ego, of our mind, of our sensual body, of our physical body. And then we recognize that every single place you go, there is potential to learn. You can learn from nature. You can be walking around a park. I was reading Cat Stevens the other day. He became a Muslim convert, and he said, I've been walking around Hyde Park for years and years. Then one day he said, I found Islam, and suddenly there is a fucking mosque in the middle of Hyde Park that was never there before. And he's saying that I created that. That's there for my learning, because I'm looking to learn. We don't find the Quran, we create the Quran. We don't find the Bible, we create the Bible, we write the Bible. We don't find the Gita or the Bhagavatam or the Puranas or the Vedas or the Tao Te Ching. We create them. The moment you start searching and looking for alignment, everything is scripture. You create the scripture because it's already in you. But to make use of that energy, we need to be aligned, we need to be sovereigns over ourselves. And the point I'm trying to make, I'm perhaps labouring the point, but the point I'm trying to make is that the scripture is there. The learning is there. Just look in the mirror and take away the defence mechanisms at who you really are. Look at the people you hate and you'll see your worst game. Look at the people you love and you'll see your best potential. Just look around you at the universe. I was talking to a friend of mine, Tom, who had a huge epiphany after taking ayahuasca. And he said the universe spoke to him and said, there is infinite potential, huge potential. If you don't believe it, just look outside at the world. Look at the universe and see how magnificent it is and how created it is, and that we are the co-creators. Well, I don't know if we're the co-creators, I only know that we create it. You know, we have all the building blocks available to us to create all of that. So the scripture is there. You can learn from anything. You can watch a window cleaner clean the window, and that can become scripture. Because just looking at a window cleaner, you can see the potential for massive business just watching a guy cleaning the window. Because that guy could be cleaning the window and he could say, windows, actually I'm cleaning the windows, but could say to the homeowner, your windows, the wood's rotting, you should get new windows. I'll put you in touch with a window fitter, and maybe he'll take a cut of that. And he could say, while I'm cleaning, I can see that your gutters and your sills aren't right. I've got a friend who can align that for you and replace that for you. Or he could look at the windows and he could say, your roof tiles are leaking. I can put you in touch with a roofer. When he's putting his ladder up, he could say, I can see that your garden needs tending. I can put you in touch with a gardener. You know, when he's looking at the path, he could say the path isn't right, or your bricks aren't right on the wall. I could put you in touch with a builder. You know, the infinite amount of work and potential work and potential business and potential service. I can learn that just from observing a window cleaner. I can see 20, 30, 40 businesses just observing a window cleaner, because everything is scripture. Everything is scripture. It's so wonderful. It's so the potential at the moment is amazing. So we've got to recognise when we say that there's no learning out there, we create an environment of no learning, because we're the ones creating the reality. We're the reality makers. When we say to ourselves, I want to learn, I actually in my meditation I say, please teach me. Please bring me teachers, bring me tuition, bring me at a pace I can cope with. Suddenly books and films and plays and articles and art and conversations and documentaries and you know, knowledge of looking at the garden, looking at how weeds grow, looking at how weeds will grow in find a tiny bit of mud in a lump of concrete and grow out of that. I can learn about how to create a reality, or I can learn about how to kill a shadow, or how to dissolve a shadow by taking a piece of old concrete out of the floor. I can learn about aligning myself by putting a post in the wall, in the floor to hold a fence up. I can learn about everything by looking at anything. I can learn about anything by looking at everything. I can learn about the universe by looking at myself. I can learn about myself by looking at the universe. Everything is scripture, and it's there. It's always been there. All you need to do is expand your conscious net. To expand your conscious net, we just need to contract old beliefs, old conditioning, old scripts, old karma. Just look in the mirror, look at the teachers. They're all around you. They're everywhere around you.